Okay, so what we have too is the rubric for Q2. It's not too different from the rubric for Q1. All right, there are also the 3 different sections. So let's take a look at the first one. Just like with your Q3 that we looked at already, we have your thesis, which is worth 0 to 1 points. Okay, so you get no points if you don't have a defensible thesis. It only restates the prompt. It provides a summary of the issue with no apparent or coherent claim. Remember, everything is an argument, and you are making an argument about something in that piece, and there is a thesis, but it does not respond to the prompt. Now, in order to get your point for this, you have to respond to the prompt with a defensible thesis that presents an interpretation and may establish a line of reasoning. Okay? In other words, there's a clear thesis that takes a position on or provides a defensible interpretation in response to the prompt. So what does this mean? This means you have to look at what the prompt asks, use the language of the prompt, and answer it. So, for example, if the prompt asks, what is the complex relationship between a father and daughter? Your thesis does not say, there is a complex relationship between the father and daughter. It explains how that relationship is complex. And then you go in to prove it. All right? It is all about having something that is defensible and an interpretation. When we talk about interpretation, we're talking about your reading of that piece. So, if it's asking if this prose that you read, which remember, that is our short pieces of like short stories or novels, it could be asking about relationships within it, it could be asking about characters, it could be asking about symbols or situations, and you have to have a reading of that. So, if it asked about the complex character in Battle Royal, what is the complex character in the role of the complex narrator in Battle Royal? You would have to then say what you think his role is and why, and prove that. That is your reading, and you prove that with your line of reasoning, which of course is that why. So what is your reading, and why is that your reading? Okay. A lot of times, you'll see words like, in the prompt, like characterization, or complex, or relationship. Whenever you see those, you have to make sure that you are defining it. DTR, define that relationship, define the complexity, what is complex about it, define the characterization. That's where you're giving adjectives to make it specific. Your definitions is what you are defending. Got it? Give me a minute, walk over, go to the next page. Now, so that's one of your points. The bulk of your points come from row B. Okay, so row B is your evidence and your commentary. In your fit, this is your F and your I. Your facts, which in this case are quotes from the text. Okay? You can use some paraphrase, but one of the things they're checking here is that you know how to embed quotes. So if all you do is paraphrase what happens in the text, you're not using the actual text, and you'll be dropped down a bunch. And then of course your I is your interpretation, which is also your analysis, which is also why your evidence proves your thesis to be true. Okay? So, I want you to notice 0 is just an or and or. Simply restates the thesis. It repeats provided information, so maybe it restates things that are in the prompt. And it provides examples that are generally irrelevant and or incoherent. So, if all you're doing is summarizing the story or rewriting the prompt, you get 0. You get a 1, you're summarizing the plot or text without reference to a thesis. You are providing non-specific reference to the text. That means no quotes. And you're providing references to the text that are vaguely relevant. And it provides little or no commentary. Essentially here, you're writing about the story, but why? Like, why are you giving me these quotes? Why are you giving me this text? That's always the question. All right? Any essay that you write, why are you putting the stuff in there that you're putting in there? It's the same thing with our authors. Authors go over their texts when they write again and again and again. They edit hundreds of times. No word is an accident in anything that you read that's been published. So for you, why are you giving me this information about the story from the story if you're not proving anything? Got it? Your 2 is a little better. It makes textual references. You have direct quotes or paraphrases that are relevant to the thesis. So they are relevant, like they make sense to what you're trying to prove. And, notice the and, provides commentary. However, it repeats, oversimplifies, or misinterprets the cited information or evidence. So you have your evidence and you have your commentary, however, your analysis sucks. Like you tried, but you're not really linking everything as clearly as you can. This is where I see a lot of people at the beginning of the year for AP Lit, where you can pull your quotes, you're like, this is important, but you can't really tell me why as well. All right, for your 3, you make textual references, direct quotes and paraphrases that are relevant to the thesis. So again, same thing as this, and you're providing commentary that explains the relationship between evidence and thesis. However, the commentary is uneven, limited, or incomplete. So you're on the right track, but not as thorough as you need to be. This is where I start to write, yes, but you need a more depth. This is like an okay, this is a why, this is a huh, did you even try? And then your 4, you make textual references that are relevant to the thesis, and you provide well-developed commentary that consistently and explicitly, when something is explicit, it's super detailed. Like, you know, when you can't listen to a song because it has explicit lyrics, it's because it's got too many details for your little, naive ears. analysis. Okay? And it explains the relationship between the evidence and the thesis. This is huge. Right? That's where it is no question why you are using your facts that you are, and no question how those things prove your point to be true. Questions here? All right, ready for last page? So that was up to 4 points, and this, so we could have 1 pointer for a thesis, up to 4 points for our evidence and commentary, which equals 5, and then your last section is worth another 1. All right, this is the one that's hard. This is the sophistication. This is where you're looking at that style and depth. Remember, like I said, this is where you're proving that lit is life. This is where you're like having those like deep moments. So, let's talk about what you need to do to get that 1 point. So, responses that earn this point may demonstrate a sophistication of thought or develop a complex literary argument by doing any of the following. So, sophistication of thought, complex literary argument. 1, you could do any of the following. Craft a thesis that demands nuanced consideration of textual evidence to prove, and then successfully proves it. So you have you make like a really thoughtful thesis and prove it. 2, you explain the significance or relevance of an interpretation within a broader context. Broader context, this is where you start getting into theme and world issues. Remember that lit is life. You discuss an alternative interpretation of a text. I'm not entirely clear on this one, but I'm pretty sure it's that you have a reading that can be proven that isn't the obvious reading. But since we haven't used this rubric yet in an actual test, I don't know what the sample looks like for 3. 4, recognizing and accounting for contradictions and complexities within the text. This is where you see juxtapositions, right? And then the ironies. Using relevant analogies to help an audience better understand an interpretation. This is where you're starting to use your own figurative language in your text. I'm almost done. And then finally, utilizing a prose style that is especially vivid, persuasive, convincing, or appropriate to the student's argument. This is where you write nicely. You use figurative language, you use elevated language, you use poignant diction, etc. Got it? Thank you.